My name is Warren Fursina.
This is Rachel Klein, and she's going to answer a few questions about Suburbia.
Well, I was born in Brooklyn, but whisked immediately away to Lynbrook, New York, on Long Island. I lived on just off of Ocean Avenue in Lynbrook.
Miller Place, Long Island.
Well, I don't know that I have a good feel for the population. Lynbrook was a medium-sized village. Long Island is full of these little communities. It had a nice little downtown area and a train station and those kinds of things. And my father worked for the village. He was a building inspector in the town. So I remember growing up thinking that I was really kind of connected to the town.
Probably around like 1,500 people tops, maybe a little bit less.
I'm trying to think. I mean, Long Island's a pretty segregated place generally. I went to Catholic schools as a kid, and I can't say that there were any African American children. I don't remember any Hispanic children in the 60s.
Mostly Caucasian people, really not a mix of diversity.
Yeah.
Basically Caucasian.
Right.
In my, in my group there, I think there were probably 2 kids who we thought of as the public school kids, which meant they had to be non-Catholic. So, when I was a kid, we would, there was fundraising that you did for the school, and selling Easter seals was a really big project. And you would go around to the neighbors, knock on their doors, and you'd have these little books of stamps that people could then put on the back of their, like Easter cards that they would send around. I mean, and also Christmas seals too. We did that too. But I remember explicitly trying to sell Easter seals on this one block that was part of that little, it wasn't a cul-de-sac, but that little dead-end area. And this lady just laughing. And then she explained that she was Jewish, and it became clear to me at that point that actually
Honestly, majority of people in my high school are probably Catholic. Very few Jewish people. I myself am Jewish. All the Jewish people pretty much know each other, so I would say it's very small, like religious. Yeah.
Okay.
Not at that age. I mean, obviously we moved from Long Island to Westchester County, another suburb north of New York City. And as I grew older, we became aware of such things. But as a kid, no, it would have been completely off the screen. Never would have heard of it, and there was no TV show, where these other these alternative family structures might have been displayed. All I had was Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best. Father Knows Best was probably the most alternative family, where you got a widowed father and 3 sons, and that's it.
I did it.
And
Always.
so it was a safe neighborhood?
Definitely.
I mean, my block had about 40 kids. You never played with somebody who wasn't in your grade. The groups divided by grade. So, like all of the kids in 1st grade played together, all the kids in 2nd grade played together. Because there was just that many, the numbers were so large that you needed something to organize yourselves around with. So that's sort of how it went.
Yep, majority of the kids on my block we were all friends, all went to the same high school, everything, best friends.
We had one of those dead-end things where it was one street up the middle and then 3 streets that bisected it, all of which were dead ends. So once you got in, you couldn't get out unless you went up the main street, right?
Pretty much my neighborhood was like a horseshoe, very small block. There was like some some pits, like I guess they're called pits, right? Like those little places where there's trees and like,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah, very much grassy trees.
The sort of the sweet spot of their young years, the ones that mirror mine, would have been in the Atlanta area. And again, we picked a street that was a dead-end street, and there was only one reason for this particular house to be chosen. It was a house on a street where we saw kids, and we knew they could go out and play the way we had. My wife was actually raised in the Bronx, and city and suburban kids do have this much in common. For the most part, their parents want them out of the house and playing outside. And so this was really important to her and to me, that the children feel comfortable enough to be able just to walk out the door and go and play with their friends and hang out, things like that. The difference, though, was when I was growing up, I could count on there being 40 kids, like I said, play only with your grade. Here we had a block, blocks. It was the lots were a little bit bigger than in Limbrook, so the houses were a little further apart. But same sort of idea: long street, dead end, and there were basically 5 kids on the block, and the oldest was the same age as my oldest, and there was a couple of younger ones, and her sister, was 4 years apart, was just this tag-along, and so those 5 had to create a playgroup, in the sense of that, they just were a team, and everybody, and they couldn't leave anybody out, even the youngest. had to bring her along, because you just needed a critical mass in order to play.
Definitely. Like, it's a better environment
Than the city.
Well, for sure. I mean, everything in my mind about suburban living is about setting a context in which a child can have both a certain kind of security, but also a certain kind of independence. And it's not as if you can't get that in certain urban neighborhoods, but the trick is it has to be an urban neighborhood, the kind of enclave where the people who live in that area sort of know one another and look out for one another, so you're not afraid about your child being out on the street. When my wife grew up in the Bronx, it was one of those Irish enclaves, and everybody knew everybody, and she had 40 kids that they played with. She only played with kids in her grade. That still exists in ethnic groups in New York City, for sure. But the suburbs, you were able to get that too with less density. So yeah, but what else would you want with a kid, for a kid?
white picket fences, trees, grass, flowers, nice houses, small little town, like old towns,
Yeah.
ice cream shops.